My name's Frank Sullivan, and I'm 57 years old. I live in a small town just outside Birmingham, Alabama, in a weathered wooden house off a red dirt road that winds past cotton fields and pine thickets. For 30 years, I drove long-haul trucks, crisscrossing the South with my hands wrapped around the steering wheel, knuckles scarred from years of shifting gears, the smell of diesel and road dust baked into my clothes. I retired 2 years ago when my back started giving out too many nights sleeping in the cab, too many miles on these old bones. Now I rattle around in that house, its sagging front porch cluttered with broken lawn chairs, a rusted coffee can full of cigarette butts, and a couple of dead potted plants I never got around to tossing. I'm not a perfect man by any stretch. I've always liked a cold Coors Light at the end of a long day, maybe 2 or 3 if I'm honest, and I've got a temper that flares up when I'm worn thin. But I'm loyal, or at least I was, until loyalty didn't mean a damn thing anymore. I was married to Diane for 28 years. She was my whole world. The woman I'd come home to after weeks on the road. The one I'd sit with on that creaky porch, sipping her strong black coffee while she talked about the stray cats she'd feed behind the gas station. I loved her. Redneck cap she'd pull on every winter. The way her hazel eyes crinkled when she laughed at my dumb trucker stories. The way she'd hum old hymns while frying chicken in the kitchen. We weren't rich, hell. We barely scraped by some years, but I thought we had something solid, something real. Turns out I was wrong. I grew up Catholic, dragged to Mass every Sunday by my mom, Mary Sullivan, a tough Irish woman with a soft heart. She'd sit me down with her little black leather Bible, its edges worn thin from her fingers, and read to me from Psalm 37, "Commit thy way unto the Lord, trust also in him, and he shall bring it to pass." She died of heart failure when I was 20, left me that Bible, and I've kept it on my nightstand ever since. I stopped going to church regular when I started trucking too many Sundays on the highway, but I never stopped believing. I pray out there in the cab under a big empty sky, asking God to keep me safe, to watch over Diane while I was gone. I figured he was listening, even if I wasn't always the best son. 6 months ago, my world fell apart. I found out Diane was cheating on me with Eddie Grayson, a plumber from town who drove a beat-up blue van and always smelled like pipe grease. It started with a hotel receipt I dug out of her coat pocket, one of those cheap places off I-65, $30 a night. I confronted her that evening, standing in her cramped living room with its peeling wallpaper and faded couch. "What's this, dear?" I asked, holding up the crumpled paper, my voice shaking. She didn't even flinch, just looked at me with those hazel eyes gone cold. No crinkle, no warmth. "I've been with Eddie for 2 years, Frank," she said, flat as a board. "I don't love you anymore. You don't make me happy." She packed a suitcase right then, threw in her clothes, that red cap, a couple pairs of shoes, and walked out the door without a backward glance. I didn't yell, didn't beg, didn't smash anything. I just stood there, watching her taillights fade down the road, then sank into her old recliner, staring at our wedding photo on the mantle. It was 1995 in that picture, her in a plain white dress, me in a rented suit that pinched at the shoulders, both of us smiling like we'd beat the world. Now it felt like a lie, all 28 years of it. After Diane left, I didn't know what to do with myself. The house was too quiet, no hum of her voice, no clatter of pots in the kitchen, just the buzz of a fly against the window or the distant rumble of a train. I started drinking more than I should have. It wasn't the occasional Coors Light anymore. I'd drive down to the liquor store by the Shell station and grab a bottle of Jim Beam, the cheap stuff in the plastic jug, $5 and some change. I'd sit at the kitchen table every night, that old oak slab scratched up from years of dinners and card games. Staring at her empty chair across from me, I'd pour a glass, then another, the bourbon burning down my throat, warming the cold pit in my chest. I'd see her in my head, her pouring coffee in the morning, her laughing at some story about a trucker named Big Earl who ate 6 burgers at a diner in Georgia. I'd hear her voice, soft and teasing, "Frank, you're full of it." Now she was gone, and I was alone with the bottle and the ghosts. Last Friday night, I hit bottom. I'd been drinking since noon, skipping the glass and swigging straight from the jug, the room spinning slow around me. I sat there in the kitchen, the fluorescent light flickering overhead, casting shadows on the linoleum floor. My hands shook as I picked up that wedding photo from the table that had been sitting there all week. Yellowed and curling at the edges, Diane's smile in that picture, bright and alive, cut me deeper than any knife. I whispered, God, why'd you let her do this to me? What did I do wrong? The wind rattled the loose window pane, but no answer came. I couldn't stand it anymore, the silence, the hurt, the way her leaving hollowed me out. I grabbed the half-empty jug of Jim Beam, stumbled out to my truck, a '98 Dodge Ram with silver paint chipped to hell, the cab still smelling of motor, oil and stale cigarettes, and climbed in. I didn't know where I was going, didn't care. I turned the key, the engine coughed into life, and peeled out onto the dark country road. No street lights out there, just my headlights slicing through the night, picking out patches of dry grass and twisted oak trees along the dirt shoulder. I took another pull from the bottle, the bourbon sloshing against my lips, spilling down my chin, my eyes blurred, tears mixing with the booze in my head pounded with every heartbeat. I saw Diane in my mind, clear as day, her laughing with Eddie in some dingy motel room, her telling me I wasn't enough, her walking out that door like I was nothing. I gripped the wheel tighter, my knuckles white, and growled, God, if you're up there, do something. Help me or kill me, I can't live like this. The truck swerved as my hand slipped, the road blurring into a black smear. Then it happened. I didn't see what I hit, maybe a deer, maybe a rut, but the wheel jerked hard, tires screeching, and the Dodge veered off the road. It plunged down a shallow ditch, rocks crunching under the chassis, and flipped once, twice before slamming to a stop. Glass shattered around me, the windshield exploding into a spider web of cracks. Metal groaned and twisted. My head smashed into the driver's side door, a white-hot jolt of pain searing through my skull. I tasted blood, felt the world tilt, then nothing. Darkness swallowed me whole, no sound of crickets, no hum of the engine, just a cold, endless silence. I woke up, but I wasn't in the truck. I wasn't anywhere I could name. I stood on a stretch of red dirt road, the same kind that ran behind my house, but there was no house, no ditch, no wrecked Dodge, just an endless stretch of earth under a sky pricked with a handful of faint stars. The air was still, cool against my skin, and I felt light. No pain throbbed in my head, no bourbon churned in my gut, no weight pressed down on my shoulders. It was like every ache, every burden had been peeled away, leaving me bare, but alive in a way I hadn't felt in years. I knew I wasn't fully in this world anymore, somewhere between the living and the gone. Then I heard a voice, low and steady, warm like a fire on a winter night. It wasn't loud or thundering, not some preacher on a pulpit bellow, but close, personal, like my mom calling me in from the yard when I was a kid. Frank, it said, you've let the darkness pull you too far. I spun around, heart racing, but saw no one, just the road stretching into the shadows. Still, I felt him, God, right there with me, his presence wrapping around me like a heavy coat. I dropped to my knees, the dirt soft under me, and tears poured out, streaking through the dust, and blood caked on my face. I'm sorry, Lord, I choked out. I lost Diane, lost everything I built. I can't go and I don't want to. He didn't snap at me, didn't judge. His voice came soft, like a father soothing a broken son. I haven't abandoned you, Frank, but you need to see what's happened. Why you're here. Diane was taken by darkness, led astray by evil into harlotry, and I'll show you the signs, so you can protect yourself from now on. My breath caught, not from fear, but from the weight of what he was saying. I nodded, or thought I did, and waited, my whole being hanging on his words. He didn't rattle off a list like some grocery order. Instead, he guided me through my own memories, peeling back the years with Diane, showing me things I had missed or maybe didn't want to see. Look at her eyes, he said first, and I saw her in my mind those last couple years, sitting across from me at the table. She'd smile when I'd come home from a run, say, missed you, Frankie, her lips. curling up nice and sweet. But her eyes, those hazel eyes I used to get lost in, they'd gone flat, empty, like she was looking right through me to someone else. That's the first sign. He whispered, the lie lives in their eyes, no matter how honeyed their words. I swallowed hard, the truth of it sinking in like a stone. Then he took me to the night she'd disappear. Remember how she'd leave, he said, and I saw it clear Diane pulling on her coat, that red cap tucked in her pocket, saying, gonna meet some girlfriends, or need a walk to clear my head. She'd come back hours later, after midnight, her hair mussed, her clothes carrying a whiff of cigarette smoke and something sharper, something sour I couldn't name. I'd ask where she'd been, and she'd brush me off with a laugh. Don't be paranoid, Frank. He said she craved the dark because it hid her shame. That's the second sign they run from my light, from truth. I clenched my fists, the memory stinging fresh. Next, he turned gentle but firm. When did you last come to me? I froze, shame washing over me. I saw Diane rolling her eyes when I'd pull out Mom's Bible after supper. Hear her snicker, still praying to your imaginary friend, Frank. She teased me about church, called me an old fool stuck in the past, and I'd laugh it off, wanting to keep the peace. Slowly, I stopped praying, stopped reading, stopped going to mass, anything to make her happy, to hold on to her. She sat doubting you, he said, drove a wedge between us. That's the third sign they pull you away from me, leave your soul adrift. I bowed my head, tears dripping into the dirt. Then a smell hit me, not here on this road, but in my mind, sharp and real. Diane's perfume from those last months, some cheap floral stuff she'd splash on before heading out. It wasn't sweet like it used to be. It turned harsh, cloying, like something rotting under a pretty mask. I'd catch it when she'd breeze past me to the bedroom. It was that made my stomach turn, but I'd ignore it. That's the fourth sign. He said, the stench of death clings to them, a mark of the evil that's taken root. I shuddered, the pieces clicking together. Finally, he showed me the worst of it. Look at her heart, he said, and I saw the night I broke down sitting on the couch, voice cracking as I asked, what's going on with Eddie? Tell me the truth. She didn't comfort me, didn't even blink. She smirked, a cruel little twist of her mouth, her eyes glinting with something dark, amused, like my tears were a show she enjoyed. You're pathetic, Frank, she'd said, then turned away. She found joy in your pain, he said, because the darkness stole her mercy. That's the fifth sign. I buried my face in my hands, sobbing, seeing her for what she'd become, a stranger, a shell of the woman I'd loved. I looked up, or tried to, my voice hoarse. What do I do now, Lord? How do I keep going? His answer came steady, strong. Stand up, Frank. I'm giving you life again, a chance to walk in light. Read Psalm 37, commit your way to me and I'll mend what's broken. A warmth spread through me, starting in my chest, flowing out to my fingertips, like a hand pulling me up from the pit. You're enough, he added, soft as a breeze, because I'm with you. I wanted to stay there, in that peace, but the road started fading, the stars blurring, and I felt myself slipping back. I opened my eyes to chaos, red and blue, lights flashing through the shattered windshield. The Dodge twisted like a tin can in the ditch. My head screamed, a pounding ache radiating from where it had hit the door, and I tasted copper, blood crusting on my lips. My chest burned, ribs cracked and grinding with every breath, but I was alive. An EMT, a kid with a buzz cut and a frantic voice yanked the door open, shouting, "Sir, can you hear me? You're awake, holy hell. You're lucky," I croaked. Thank God, my throat raw. They pulled me out, glass crunching under their boots, and laid me on a stretcher. The night air was cold against my skin, sirens wailing as they strapped me and Dot in the ambulance. They checked me over 3 broken ribs, a gash on my forehead needed stitches, a mild concussion. You shouldn't have made it, the paramedic said, shaking his head as he hooked me to an IV. Trucks totaled must have flipped 3 times. I nodded, or tried to, the pain flaring but my pulse steady. At the hospital, the doc ran x-rays, came back with wide eyes. It's a miracle you're breathing, Mr. Sullivan. A crash like that should have killed you. I just closed my eyes, whispering, I know who saved me. They let me go the next morning, patched up with bandages and a bottle of painkillers. A tow truck hauled the Dodge away, nothing left but scrap, and a cop drove me home. The sky turning pink with dawn. As we pulled up to my road, a hawk swooped low over the hood, its wings wide and dark against the rising sun, then soared off toward the pines. I thought of Psalm 37:4, delight thyself also in the Lord, and he shall give thee the desires of thine heart. That was his sign, clear as day, telling me I wasn't alone. I haven't touched a drop of liquor since that night. The next day, I limped around the house, ribs aching, and started cleaning. I dumped every last bottle of Jim Beam I could find, 3 in the kitchen, 1 under the sink, half a jug in the truck's glove box, watching the amber liquid swirl down the drain. I swept the porch, tossed the busted chairs, fixed the loose boards with a hammer and some nails I found in the shed. I even planted a few marigolds in the cracked pots, not as neat as Diane's flowers, but they're yellow and alive, and that's enough for now. The house doesn't feel so empty anymore, not with the ghosts gone. I started going to church again, St. Mary's, the little Catholic place on Oak Street where Mom used to take me. I sit in the back, Mom's Bible in my lap, flipping to Psalm 37 every Sunday. Father O'Malley, a gray-haired priest with a thick Irish brogue, noticed me after a couple weeks. Good to see you, Frank, he said one morning, clapping my shoulder. Heard you've been through hell, glad you're here. I just nodded, not ready to spill it all, but I stayed for coffee after Mass, listening to the old folks chatter about their grandkids and the weather. Diane hasn't called, hasn't come back, and I don't expect her to. I don't lie awake, picturing her with Eddie anymore, don't hear her laugh or see her smirk in my dreams. I've let her go, not because she deserves it, but because I deserve peace. I forgive her, or I'm trying to, one prayer at a time. It's not easy some nights. I still feel that ache, that hollow spot where she used to be, but it's lighter now, bearable. I told my story to a few people around town. Joe Ramsey, an old-timer who smokes a pipe at the diner, and Martha Klein, who runs the bakery and always slips me an extra biscuit. Joe puffed out a ring of smoke and said, hell of a tale. Frank, you ought to write it down. Martha nodded, wiping flour off her hands. Folks need to hear that God's still working, even when we're a mess. I shrugged, not much for writing, but I've been thinking about it. Maybe this is me sharing it, right here, with you. If you're listening, I want you to know something. God doesn't give up on us, no matter how far we fall. I was drunk, broken, ready to die in that ditch, but he pulled me back. He showed me Diane for what she'd become, not my wife anymore, but a woman lost to darkness, marked by signs I was too blind to see till he opened my eyes, the empty eyes, behind her smile, the way she clung to the night, the doubt she planted in my face, that rotting smell she carried, the cruel joy she took in my pain. Those were his warnings, his way of saying, you're worth more than this. Every morning now, I make coffee strong, black, like Diane used to, and sit on the porch, watching the sun climb over the pines. I open Mom's Bible to Psalm 37, trace the words with my finger, and pray, Lord, I'm committing my way to you. Keep me steady. Some days, I swear I hear him answer, not loud, not clear, but a whisper in the wind, a rustle in the trees, telling me I'm enough. And for the first time in a long while, I believe it.